Ho. He's a seasoned HSBC banker, and he's the head of the China desk for HSBC USA Commercial Banking. He's based in New York, and he's come down to this event. Thank you so much, Eric. And before coming to New York, he was the head of HSBC's business in Chengdu, and one of my favorite Chinese cities. So I want to get some notes from you before you leave. But thank you, Eric, for being here. If you want to come up this way, or you can kind of wander, but take one of these mics.
I think I would still need my laptop.
Yeah, sure.
Your laptop is?
Yeah, it was there.
It's been stolen.
Someone stole it.
All right. Let me go.
Yeah,
you introduce yourself. I'll go find it.
Yeah, I don't know how many of you know Chengdu. That's where I was born and brought up. So it's in southwest part of China, and a beautiful city, and many people know about panda, right? So where pandas pass around.
Look at this.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, very good. Thanks.
Yeah, because I prepared something, just wanted to show you the slides. Unfortunately, it doesn't work here, but I think I can just talk through. And yeah, just a little bit introduction about myself. Yeah, I was born and brought up in Chengdu. And yeah, I had a little bit background in Australia. I was educated there. I got my bachelor's degree and master's degree in Sydney, in University of New South Wales. And yeah, I've been with HSBC for quite a few years. Actually, it is my only employer so far. I joined HSBC back in 2004 as a graduate in Shanghai. Once I completed my education in Australia. So yeah, since that time, it has been a while. It has been almost, it's going to be 20 years next year. But I never never fed up with this job because I've been moving around. That's why I love this job. I love HSBC because it actually provides a large platform for every individual working in this organization. So in the past 19 years, of course, I worked in my hometown Chengdu, and also I had the chance to work in different cities in China, Shanghai, Beijing, of course, and also Wuhan, and also I covered Western China for quite a few years, Xi'an, Wuhan, Kunming, if you know about the cities. And yeah, I was we call it branch manager, but it's really the kind of head of business for HSBC in Chengdu right before I came here. So before I came to New York City in 2019, I was the head of business for HSBC in Chengdu. And yeah, so and then once I came here, the role that I currently have is called China desk. So many people are wondering, what does it mean? What does that mean? Yeah, I do have a desk in New York City. And I guess what it really means that I'm the kind of bridge between HSBC China and HSBC USA. And also I'm the bridge between our clients here in the US and our team in HSBC USA. I think that's a pretty unique position that HSBC have, and it's really our kind of success recipe. How we win clients, how we support clients across different continents, different countries. So yeah, we're glad to be here, and it's actually my first time in Atlanta. Yeah, so really glad I had a chance, and thanks for the invitation. So I actually support all the Chinese inbound business to the US. What China inbound business means that all the Chinese subsidiaries here in the US, of course we have a large network in China, we have a very strong customer base in China, and once our clients from China, once they establish their subsidiaries here in the US, that's where we support them on the ground. As I kind of said, I'm the facilitator and the communicator and connector between all these parties and put every pieces together. We do have teams on the ground, and for example, here in Atlanta, we have Jiwoo, we have James, and we also have a couple of our other colleagues joining today. And yeah, feel free to talk to them after the breakfast. So today because as Trevor kind of introduced, I believe other participants are going to talk quite a bit U.S. Americans doing business in China. Excuse me. But on the other side, because my mandate here is really to support Chinese corporate growing their business in the U.S., so it's kind of the other direction. So we kind of had a little bit discussion and decided that perhaps it's a good idea that I do a presentation just ahead of other participants, giving you the kind of details and what's happening around in China. So I'm talking about China's FDI into the U.S. and we are going to talk about a little bit the kind of challenges and of course opportunities that Chinese corporate have in the U.S. Perhaps nowadays people normally look at the flip side, which is there are a lot of challenges. I mean, the environmental, out there in the environment, there are a lot of headwinds, the geopolitical tensions, and the trade wars, and a lot of downside. But what I wanted to say that there are actually a lot of challenges, a lot of opportunities as well for Chinese corporate in the U.S. as well. And of course, at the end, I will also do a little bit advertisement for HSBC here, and I hope you like that bit as well. So, unfortunately, I couldn't show you the slides, but it is more visual if you can see the slide. So, talking about Chinese FDI in the U.S., many people don't really realize that it's a quite recent phenomenon. And many people also compare that with the US FDI into China, which have been going on for quite many years, actually, at least since early 1990. And if we see the chart, the figures, the US investment into China actually started as early as 1980s. But it really didn't quite pick up until 2000. And if people remember the time China joined WTO in 2002. And before that year, the FDI from the US to China is around 5 billion. And once China joined WTO in 2002, the figure quickly picked up to the range between 10 billion to 15 billion. And after 2008 and after the Beijing Olympics, that's where a lot of foreigners and foreign corporates realized China is such an open and huge country for everyone. People started to pull investment into China. That's where the FDI from the US to China actually reached over 20 billion a year around the year 2010. So between the year 2010 and 2020, the figure kind of varied between 15 billion to 20 billion US dollars. So it kind of maintained on that level until COVID. So it dropped quite a bit after COVID, and then it was COVID, and it continued dropping. But on the other side, when we look at Chinese FDI into the US, it was virtually very little before 2010. So before that, China actually had started to become the manufacturing base for the world, and there are a lot of trading activities between China and other countries, particularly with the US. However, the traditional way is really that the Chinese producers, they are the sellers, and the US buyers, they just sign an international contract, so they do the international trade. And that really is not capital flow. So when we talk about FDI, we see the money come from China to the US. Actually, it started in 2010, so 2010. Before that, there was very little Chinese FDI into China. And the only case that people could remember is perhaps Lenovo acquired IBM's PC business in 2005. And that was kind of landmark case where Lenovo invested like, if I remember correctly, 1.2 billion US dollars into the US to buy IBM's PC business. So that was probably the only case before, the only bad market or large case before 2010. And around the year 2010, China's government started to initiate a kind of policy called going Austrian strategy. So basically what it means that encourages Chinese investment going out of China and put their money in both developed countries and developing countries. And at that time, it wasn't called Belt and Road strategy. At that time, it was still not existing yet. But China's government started to do that around that time. So we saw that Chinese capital flowing into the US really started to pick up very quickly in 2010. And it quickly reached to around 50 billion US dollars in the year of 2016. And it maintained a pretty high level at 2017. So it was still around 40 billion US dollars in 2017. But we saw the figure dropping very quickly in 2018. At that time, actually at first place, Chinese government started to put a pause on the Chinese outbound investment. And the main reason is that in 2016, the RMB started to depreciate a lot after years of appreciation. So there were a lot of investment in property market and in some of the speculative activity as well. So we saw the figure came down very quickly and down to below 10 billion US dollars in 2019. And then it was COVID, it was trade war. And last year, I just checked the figure, it was only 5 billion US dollars. It was, if you think about the sizes of these two countries, 5 billion US dollars is virtually nothing. But something that I'll talk about later is that that 5 billion US dollar really don't tell the true story. It doesn't give a full picture of Chinese investment in the US and also the kind of impact here. So and also if we look at the composite of the FDI, Chinese FDI in the US is mainly done by acquisition. So instead of greenfield projects, so more than 90% of the investment were actually completed by acquisition. It actually contrasts to US investment in China. So more than 60% of US investment in China were actually done by greenfield projects. So it's a quite interesting contrast. And also I wanted to kind of highlight the industry mix. The US investment in China are pretty diversified from information technology to auto to food and beverage. And we saw large US corporate like Ford, GM, they form 50-50 joint venture with Chinese auto companies and just to dive into that huge market, and also those food beverage companies. But look at the Chinese investment in the US, it's another story. On an accumulated basis, over a quarter of Chinese FDI into the US actually have been going to real estate market. I think it's pretty reasonable, right? So for those people who have been in China, the property market in China in the past 20 years has been really hot, right? So it is reasonable and imaginable if Chinese investment, when they go out overseas and when they come to the US market, the first thing that they look at is property market. So a quarter of that went into the property market, and a lot of them were into infrastructure, and that was actually done by those state-owned enterprises. So that was the kind of story in the past few years. However, if we look at the story recently, the landscape actually changed quite dramatically. what I mean by that is that in terms of the industry mix, it shifted to shifted to less sensitive areas, and how to define sensitive area also changed from time to time, because at the beginning it was only like a national security, but then US government put a lot of focus on expanded areas. For example, if there is Chinese investment into a sector or industry who have consumer data, that became one of the focuses as well. And we have also seen some cases that when Chinese company, their business is like just pretty just agriculture, and when they want to buy a piece of land, they met a lot of challenges on the ground, and people, and there was probably one of the cases that I've seen. They said there's a military base before that piece of land, so it became a problem as well. So we have seen that, there, apart from the heightened geopolitical tension, there is more cautious and defensive approach by the US government as well. And property market is no longer the case. We don't see many Chinese investing into the property market nowadays. And sensitive sectors like information technology, semiconductors, virtually there is very little as well. However, in past few months, we have seen some hot areas that attracted a lot of interest from the Chinese corporate, especially in the renewable energy sectors. So if people know about the industry in China, China has really been leading some of the subsectors, for example, solar panels, for example, EV batteries and the EV itself. So China has a very complete industry and supply chain along these sectors, and it's very natural for them to expand their business overseas out of China. And we look at the US, and in particular, from last year when we introduced IRA, right, so Inflation Reduction Act. So Inflation Reduction has nothing to do with inflation, but all about supporting the renewable energy sectors and encourage them to establish factories around in the US. So we saw those leading Chinese players coming to the US and at least thinking about to establish their factory here, not only to grab those incentives provided by the government, but also to continue maintaining their market in the US. So we believe that will still be the case, and we saw a lot of activities in that sector. Of course, there are other sectors continue to, we have seen those activities, for example, consumer products. The US is the largest consumer products in the world, and there's no reason why Chinese players don't think about this market. And another thing that I kind of want to point out is that, because in China, there are a lot of state-owned enterprises versus private-owned enterprises, so SOEs versus POEs. And very interesting observation that we have is that most of the Chinese players who are active in the US market are actually POEs, so private-owned enterprises. And there are obvious reasons, and the state-owned enterprises are really directed by the Chinese government, where they invest, what sector they invest, and what activity they do. But private-owned enterprises, they are more commercial-driven, right? So wherever they can make money, wherever they can make profit, they go there. So the US market really provides them with the kind of the deep market with good consumers, and also, I'm sure other participants later will share your observation in China nowadays. I've been there in the summertime. There is pretty weak demand in domestic Chinese market nowadays. And so when look at the global map, those Chinese corporate more look at the US market and European market as a kind of stabilizer for their overall performances. So it actually becomes more important for them, especially for those private-owned enterprises. So I think those the kind of landscape and the trend that we have seen. And yeah, some of the other kind of trend that I want to share. As I mentioned, the FDI into the US from China is pretty low. However, we saw that the activities the Chinese operate in the market still maintain a high level. What I mean by that is that instead of just doing international trade between China and the US, more and more Chinese corporates come to the US and establish their trading platform or sales arm on the ground. So they will have a sales force on the ground to help them to do marketing, to do all the sales activity. And they basically what they do is that their parent companies sell the products to their US subsidiaries, and the US subsidiaries sell this product in the US. So that activity is still going on, and we don't see that we don't see them reducing at all. And also, as Chinese corporates in this kind of environment, in this kind of challenging environment, they are constantly evolving and adapting to the challenges. One of the examples that we saw a lot of Chinese companies, instead of just selling their products out from China, they have started to establish their manufacturing base in Southeast Asia, right? So Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, and even India. So one example that I give you is that for the tire industry, so the tires for the autos, as well as the solar panel industry, they have been doing that at least 5 years ago. So they go to Southeast countries and actually manufacture their products over there, and then they sell to the US. And so that's still something that we saw pretty concurrent and up, as well as Mexico. Right? So Mexico provides kind of tax benefit. Yeah, I think I talked quite a bit on the market and coming back to what we do. Yeah, so HSBC, many people know that we are an international bank. We operate in over 50 countries. And it's not only about the coverage, the geography, but also the depth in each country. For example, in China, we are the largest foreign bank in China. We cover over 90% of the GDP in more than 30 cities. And we do have people on the ground in China. That actually means a lot for US operating in China. So what I mean is that when I was in Chengdu, we have a full team working in different market segments, not only frontline, like relationship managers for corporate, but also a full team of compliance. When I was the head of business there, I spent quite a bit of time working with the local regulators to understand what they think. And I believe when people who have been doing this in China, they understand the kind of dynamic and differences across the country. And even there is a pretty centralized government policy system, the practices and the interpretation at local governments could vary a lot. So that's where we help multinational companies, when they do business in China, help them to understand the dynamics. And we'll talk about the other direction. We have a pretty full and experienced team on the ground as well, and as well as here in Atlanta. When Chinese corporate come into the US, they need to have a trusted partner to advise them, to give them the best advice how they do business here in the US. And these two countries, there are a lot of differences, not only like the law, the legal system, and like the business environment, but also banking. Right? So as simple as how you open a bank, how you operate a bank account, that is actually very different to what they have in China. And we give them the best advice, and we let them know how they do banking, and sometimes how they can obtain a banking facility here in the US. So we have a pretty unique system called we call it international banking. So we have a global relationship manager normally sits along with the headquarters, and we know about them probably for years, and we know how their decision-making process is, and we know about their decision-making logic. So when they come to the US, I'm probably the first person they reach out, and then I reached out to our colleagues on the ground, for example, Zaheer, and we work together to help them to deliver their business performance in the US. So I think that's very unique, even in the banking market. And we, as a team, we work closely and we work seamlessly to help this client across the border. I think people doing business, all the international business agree that cross-border business is difficult, right? So from China to the US, from the US to China. So we help the client to navigate through all the challenges and also give them the financial solutions.
Yeah, so we can jump to the panel.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I got you off. I just feel like
we're
we're
So I guess very glad to be here, and I'm hoping to have more time to come to Atlanta and meet you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Sorry to burn down the clock and then people out on time. So as I call you up, our panelists, if you don't mind joining us, we've got Mr. David Yang, the founder of General Financial Group and also the Atlanta Chinese Entrepreneurs Club. So David is just back from China. I'm going to spare you all the long bios and in favor of having them describe their businesses. Anisa Telwar, and remind me how to say the final one. Kaicker.
Kaicker.
Got it. Who's the founder and CEO of our namesake business, Anisa International. Thanks for joining us, Anisa. And then we've got, last but not least, Zaheer Faruqi, who is the founder and CEO of Aventure Aviation, which does spare parts for aircraft and much more, obviously. But we're going to hear from 3 different perspectives here on recent and not so recent interactions with China. But thank you, Eric, for that baseline. It was reminding me about some of the things I've written about here in Georgia over the years. We had a tire factory that never came to fruition. It was a $500 million investment, and that company was a Chinese company, but with its main manufacturing in Thailand. So that it really shows what you're talking about with the move to Southeast Asia. Similarly, we've had solar panel manufacturers and all those tariffs that are going on. And then we've had a lot of flooring companies recently, Chinese flooring companies setting up shop in Northwest Georgia. So the FDI landscape has really shifted for sure. But yes, now we're going to turn more to the American perspective. Do y'all mind if y'all share a mic? I'm going to keep this one.
That's fine.
I don't think
Yeah.
you can hear if I just do this one. Can you hear in the back? Okay, good. Well, I'll leave y'all with
I don't even know if I need a mic, I'm pretty loud.
Well, yeah, why don't y'all just start describing your business and your recent and exposure to China and your history of operating in the country. I think that would be a good baseline. Maybe
Okay,
Anisa,
cool.
you start
Thank you.
there. Anisa was kind enough to let me visit one of their factories a while ago, probably 7 or 8 years ago, in Tianjin, China. And I know since then, the business has expanded dramatically and they're in new facilities, but I'll let you tell more about what you do. And
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you so much. My name's Anisa. I don't know if this is on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, turn it on.
Okay.
This one is.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because
just
I can.
straight. No,
Okay, cool.
just for the people in the back.
Okay, cool. Hello.
There we
Good
go.
morning. I'm excited to be here. I forgot you went to my facility.
Yeah,
So that's pretty
yeah.
cool. So I started working directly with Asia in 1993. I was able to work with a Korean partner who helped me integrate into China. I manufacture cosmetic brushes. It's a very high-touch, handcrafted product. Some parts are automated, but there is a lot of labor involved. In 1996, I had my first trip to China. I went to northern China. It was very intimidating. Then in 2002, I started to build my own facilities. So I had my first facility built in Tianjin, and it was mainly for the operation of the brush. We would, there is fiber, there is ferrule, there is handle. It could be wood, aluminum, PBT extrusion, and we did a lot of that process internally. Then in 2012, what was happening with Beijing and the regulations for environment, and they had a very large conference. So they started shutting down facilities. So part of our, the anodization was shut down, so I had to look for new anodization. So I built a new anodization facility in 2018 in a very high-tech, environmentally friendly facility in Shanghai.
Can you tell us what the ferrule is and what
Yeah,
the
so
anodization
sorry.
process
Yeah,
is?
sorry.
Just for those of us who are not like
Yeah, I'm like, yes.
Because I learned what a ferrule was
Yeah.
when I was at your factory.
Yes,
That's the first time I
yes,
learned.
yeah. So
The metal
most, I mean,
things.
there's quite a bit of men here, but you're you know, the cosmetic brush, you know, you have a head, you have a ferrule, which is like a collar, which keeps it all together, and then you have a handle. And usually that would be made of, and you know, a long time ago could be brass. Now it is aluminum. The aluminum has to be colored. It has to be punched. It comes in either a strip or it comes in a chip. So we have that within my facility, the heavy punching. It can be very messy. And then you have to cut it, and then you have to color it. And that coloring process can be very dirty. Groundwater can be impacted, VOC, and how it is for health and safety. So how it was done in the beginning, which I am guilty of, was very, you know, very non-environmentally friendly.
When I visited your factory, though,
It was there.
At that time, you had already built your own water treatment.
Okay.
You know, before you had it required.
Okay. Yes, but I don't know how really. It
Yeah.
may have been a bit of like. So now what we're doing is that the water that is after the process is a gray water that could actually be drank, you know. So I'm very proud of that. It's automated. That was from 2018. Then right before 2020, we built our new operations facility because the Chinese government literally pushed us out. It was pretty intense, but because of my relationships and because of my team, we were able to negotiate and navigate. But it was a very difficult time. The new facility, I didn't get to see it till just May. So it was, you know.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So let's come back to that in just a moment.
Okay.
Zaheer, you've not been since when? 2019, I think was the last time.
That
you
is
were in
correct.
China. But you've expanded your business
Sure.
somehow.
Yes, we have. Thank you for the opportunity. Good morning to everyone. My name is Zaheer Faruqi with Aventure Aviation. We're a company located here in Peachtree City, selling aircraft spare parts. We do not manufacture anything in China, but we do a lot of exports to China. And it was started in 2014 when the Georgia Department of Economic Development basically helped us and pushed us to say, try China. And since then, our business has grown. Yes, we had some problems during the COVID time period, but today we have 5 dedicated people just handling business from China.
Wow.
So all the money I spend and possibly you spend at Walmart, guess what? We then go back and bring the money back. Our business has grown, and that is due to a gentleman that we have recruited in Beijing and another gentleman also from China who lives in New York. The two of them tag team, and they have done a wonderful job for us, and our business has grown tremendously in China, and we see a lot of good opportunities there.
Great. David?
Yes, my name is David Yan. I actually came to this country in 1994. So I was originally supposed to be trained as a diplomat. Actually, matter of fact, the formal Ministry of Foreign Affairs is my schoolmate or classmate. So I have some little bit connection with the so-called political elite groups in China. So I know from there some so-called inner circle information. And meantime, we operate as a financial service company. So we have some client mainly to the export business in China. So I have the first-hand information in terms of what's going on in China. So if you ask me how is the economic or situation in China, I think the correct answer is compared to what, which years. And if you go read all the newspaper here, is the Chinese economy is collapsing, it's falling down, the country almost in the crisis. But when you're landing in China, even being there, and you hardly see something. You got to talk to people, find out. You just walking on the street, it seems everything normal. And the sad part is everything same. I'm going to elaborate later on. That's the worst part. The lockdown last 3 years, you walk the street, it seems like it never happened. It's very interesting if you talk to different group of people, and I think this is a very complicated issue. You can't summarize with one liner is good or bad. To me, the last 40 years growth rely on the real estate infrastructure or export. I think that model is over. Mainly because domestic decision making and geopolitical issues. It's not the decision 100% chosen by the leaderships. Somehow it just happens, especially of the pandemic.
Can you tell us, stay with you, David, tell us what you're hearing from your clients on the ground. You mentioned you were there for, what, 5 months or something? And and you were visiting a lot of your clients in different parts of China, and you had some really interesting insights on how they, kind of their consumer sentiment. Because you can get these kind of broad surveys and purchasing managers, indexes, and all this, but it's not the
Let
same
me give you
feeling.
just the idea in terms of the wealth, the asset. 1%, the political elite or economic elite, they own 37% of the whole nation's asset. 1%, I think it's probably at least similar to the situation in the United States. And 100 million we call middle class. They own about 14% of the national asset. And 1.3 billion people, which is the majority of the Chinese population, they own only 3.7% of the whole nation's wealth. So if you look in this big picture, that give you an idea of what's going on in China. And remember, the ruling party, their ideology and their philosophy is prosperity for common everybody. So this picture, remember this background. Back to the question, if you go to the export right now in China, everybody say it's really bad, really, really bad. A lot of factory closed. And because I do the data, I do the accounting, tax, all this stuff, I understand it partially because last 2 years, the American buying crazy from Chinese, the European same way. They're afraid the supply chain, so they just overbought. So the inventory is really high. So there's a technical adjustment. So we'll see next year, or maybe the fourth quarter. I think the export is seasonal. It's not just collapse. Some is because decoupling, but a lot of stuff. I don't think the United government's finding the alternative yet. But the trending is there. I think it's after 10 years, there are going to be some of the decoupling. So that's for the export. And for the 1.3 billion people I talk about, their life pretty much same. Because those are the people are not as sensitive to general economy. They are in the mode everyday struggle. I give you an example. I have some beef, meat today, and tomorrow I have noodles, vegetables. For them, it's pretty much the same. You have to understand this, as the majority of Chinese population, why the government can do all this stuff. Like the real estate crisis. If it happened in the United States, we're going to have social turmoil, protests, everything. But in China, it's totally different things. The two big real estate developer, they take the blame right now. They're the bad guy. So if we find the bad guy, everything's solved. So,
Well, and Anisa, how are you feeling about the export market, right? That's mainly what you do there. I'm not sure if you're serving the domestic Chinese market at all, but have you been kind of enraptured in all this geopolitical turmoil, and how have you dealt with it?
No, I really like what David said, and it's correct. So people were concerned there was long lead times getting, shipments in the United States. We'd have to do our freight. We saw all the photos in LA. You couldn't get a freight in and what was happening. So everybody overpurchased, which was kind of fantastic right after COVID. But now things are level setting for inventory. So I think that's all we're experiencing right now. I think everybody's definitely focused on Christmas and holiday. What is going to happen? All the Black Friday sales are starting now. I mean, we're feeling we have an issue in the U.S. which impacts China. I think the attitude there, though, is strong. My people who work for me are phenomenal. I see a ingenuity in a different way now in their leadership style and their management style. What they want to spend on is changing. Usually I would always gift when I travel like chocolates or lipstick. And they're like, can you bring us some coffee? I'm like, why do you want coffee now? What is happening? So coffee, trends, the cafes in Japan and Korea is now like, when you see that happening in China, it tells you this quiet luxury that is there. I really think it's interesting. So my focus is, of course, consistently, I want to grow, US, Europe. These are the markets that for China products, it's not a problem. We make a luxury premium product. I will be consistent. I have to compete with China manufacturers, though, who are very smart, very savvy on Amazon now. Really, they know what they're doing. And it's, I have to differentiate myself. But I would love, my next steps. We are doing it through Estee Lauder, Sephora, to now penetrate China market. How can I give the consumer with a China product what they want with American design, ingenuity? So I would love that as a next step. I'm lucky because I'm a woofie. I did not have to JV. So that's a pretty big deal. They don't do that anymore, the wholly foreign owned entities, the way we have been created. And I think our China, the community, the leadership around us is actually really proud of us because I am very caring to and responsible for the culture. And I want it to be a global culture. We give back. That's rare. My team will give back. That is pretty fantastic. So I have always wanted to represent China and this connection with the U.S. I'm very proud of it.
So you said you just went back in May.
Yes.
After having opened the factory after COVID.
It was phenomenal.
What was that like, and how did you feel things were different from previous visits, or were they at all?
I felt safe. I don't really feel safe in the United States. I felt so safe walking down the street. Nobody's going to do anything. There's a little bit of, they wasn't as exuberant in some sense, but the way the shopping was in the mall, like kind of a mall in a city kind of tells you what's happening in the community. And I was blown away, to tell you the truth. I was really blown away. So I will go to Shanghai. I leave next Friday. I'll go to Shanghai, Tianjin again, and I'll go to Hong Kong. I'm very interested to go to Hong Kong to see how they've been impacted and what the situation is. So I feel very positive about China. I know people like to be doom and gloom, but I don't feel that way. And I don't know if I'm being, but I've been working with China for 30 years, so.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you do hear a lot about demand slipping, and particularly the whole strategy of the Chinese government has been to boost domestic demand, and that doesn't necessarily seem to be working. And when the property market goes down, people have less.
They have issues with their property. We've always known that. But they have internal problems that really are their problems.
Yeah, but we've also been hearing the debt crisis. It's coming home to roost for many years now, how many decades? The local debt crisis. You have to kind of parse out what's real.
And if anybody knows what's going to happen to currency, I would really like to know.
Yeah.
If there's a crystal ball of any kind.
RMB helps you
go down.
Well, you're kind of a really lagging indicator on consumer demand, I think, because you sell parts that go into planes that are, air travel is kind of a luxury in a way. But demand in the Chinese market has just skyrocketed over the past few decades. How have you navigated the regulatory aspects of doing business in China with your products?
Let me just circle back to what David and Anisa have said. There's an interesting article in the New Yorker of this week, the 23rd October issue, talking all about China. and how bad things are going to be, how bad things are right now. If you read it, it's like doom and gloom. And I was looking at, I read the thing and I said, where is the good news in here? It goes on and talks about different things. And one of the things that really stuck out to me was that 80% of the solar panels in the world are made over in China. 80%. That's a huge number. And when you look at what SBA in the United States, the Small Business Administration, they're saying we'll give you some tax breaks and other things if you install solar panels. Well, where am I going to get the solar panels from? From China. So it doesn't make sense to me when somebody says, well, there's doom and gloom, not in the solar panel business, because I'm going to be installing them.
Well, that's so interesting because I mean the way things are going right now, the U.S. government is the one that's saying they're gonna try to get you to buy it from here, right?
Right.
And so it used to be that lower prices were good for everybody.
Right.
So we'll let the Chinese kind of do their thing, and that way it brings down the cost of renewable energy. But that's not the case anymore, particularly when you're talking about solar and batteries now.
Right. And I would like to just add one more thing. I'm also involved with the District Export Council, and Dan is over there. He can give you more details about them.
Me too.
Yes, of course, and you too, Trevor. Thank you. And I think Susan is here, and she's part of that too. The important thing is, we as a group have looked at different organizations, different District Export Councils all over the United States. And some of them have said that their clients have had problems nearshoring, bringing the business out of China and moving it to Mexico.
Right. Yeah.
And they've moved them to Mexico, and now they're finding out that, oh goodness me, there's some new regulations which we didn't know about, or the electricity grid is not sufficient.
Yeah.
Or there's some water shortages, and a couple of new things in there which they did not have in China. So this is something new.
Yeah.
Nearshoring isn't as attractive as it was said to be.
Yeah, there's a reason China's had this inertia, right, in the manufacturing space, because they have kind of the whole infrastructure built out, right?
Right.
They've done it for many years.
For us, looking at a business point of view, I look at the Black Friday that's coming up. How much business are we going to sell over here in the United States?
Day.
And Singles Day, November 11th, in China. There's no comparison. There's about $160 billion that they plan to spend this year. We just have to figure out how we can sell more to them. And for us, we are doing a lot of business with freight carriers like the United States equivalent of Amazon, flying products around, because if they're going to be buying $160 billion, a lot of them want the products next day, right now, today. Those are my customers, the freight carriers.
Yeah.
And that's why we are very close to SF Express, is one of the big freight carriers there.
Yeah.
So we're not seeing a problem on our side. We just have to go out and just turn over some more rocks and find new business. So we're doing well.
Good, but from a regulatory perspective, you have had some issues, right? You've had to get approvals on almost each part you sell.
Correct. This is, I believe, started some years ago when there were some tariffs. The famous word tariffs were introduced. Well, there was some reaction from there, from the Chinese Civil Aviation Authorities, or CAAC, and they came back and said, well, we have some new regulations that from today you won't be able to use refurbished spare parts on airplanes. All the airlines in the United States, all over the world, they use refurbished aircraft parts. They don't buy new, because refurbished are easier to get, and they're, of course, less in price. But when the Chinese authorities came up with this regulation, it has created a major problem for some of the freight carriers. Again, SF Express, for example, they have 40 of these Boeing 757s. And Boeing has stopped making them back in 2004. So how are you going to get new parts for that airplane? You can't. So each time the airline has to get the quotes from us and then go to CAAC and get approval. And that takes time. So yes, there is that lag time, which we hope that it's going to be resolved. And I am in touch with a few folks who are putting pressure, and we think we'll have this resolved by end of this year or early next year. Yeah.
I always love seeing the Aventure news releases when you're buying an old 757 and stripping it down. So David, I wanted to ask you, and I'll open it up to questions. I've got a million, but I'll let y'all ask yours. So you've been involved in the political landscape here in the U.S.
Yes.
and you've got these connections in China you talked about. I was curious about how, kind of the Chinese diaspora here is doing, kind of being caught in the political crosshairs in a way. And, particularly when we think about things that have been traditionally a strength for the U.S. economy, services like tourism or education, right? Here in Georgia, we have something like 30,000 foreign students a year, majority of them from China, or China's always the largest sending nation. That seems to be on the decline too as the geopolitical situation deteriorates. So it seems like we're losing out on some economic benefit that way, but I just kind of wondering what your feel is for that.
We feel sometimes kind of depressing. I talk to all the Chinese entrepreneurs. They sometimes struggle because traditionally, I think the you look at the Indian minority. They've been appointed like a CEO or even the governor or maybe the president sometime. The Chinese, we have the anti-Chinese legislation back like 200 years ago because some partial due to the Chinese nationality, their tradition. So we've been trained to be loyal to the country. There's only two nations use the motherland or fatherland. The next one, right? So we've been taught to be loyal to your fatherland or motherland, no matter where you are. So that gives the outside, the country you live in, the kind of impression are you aligned to us or you're aligned to China? So I think some of American politicians see every Chinese a spy.
Yeah.
That's it's hard to change that, and so we are in the very narrow room in terms of, we don't know how to do it. So where we at as the entrepreneur club, we're trying to promote the trade relationships, because that's the anchor of the U.S.-China relationships. And every time you talk of the concept of China, you ask anybody on the street or politician, they kind of avoid this topic. They don't want to attend our events because this is Chinese related.
Yeah.
But if you talk, do you have a Chinese friend? They say, yes, they're great. So this is, you see the struggling,
It's policy versus people, right?
Yeah. Same thing like me. If people ask me, what do you think of the border policy? What is the immigration policy in this country? I have a concept. I say, you secure border, all this stuff. But if I have some Spanish friends, I know they're undocumented, but I feel sympathy for them. So I contradict myself. This is human nature. So we try to have a little bit of human touch.
Right.
There's people-to-people relationships. That's probably the key to promote the two countries' relationships. And I think I just give everybody a little bit of advice, because in China, once you're doing business, the politics, the decision-making by the highest-ranking leaderships, they dictate everything. So we keep talking about the market economy, all this index, that index, it doesn't matter at all, right? It's really just the decision. In the last 40 years, the country, the governing party is quite relaxed in terms of the business market economy. But now they have a tight control. But once they have a contradiction goal, one is want to revive the business, on the other hand, they want to tighter control. So for all people want to invest in China, you got to figure out that point. How do you balance two? Otherwise, you're going to be either buried or somehow you don't know how you lost everything. You just no idea, because the regulation could come out tomorrow and could the next day after, it's gone.
Yeah.
So it's uncertainty for the Chinese economy. But I'm, as raised in China and know China, I think a little bit, I would say the model change. And it's going to be new normal, like a 5% or 4% GDP. And I still believe the current leaderships truly believe the prosperity for common people. I don't know is it good or bad, but they got changed. because of the wealth gap, the income inequality, all this stuff. And because we have 1.3 billion people, only have not nearly 4% of asset, so they have the mass population support. So the West, I think, is accustomed to the Chinese economy based on the prior model. So they're surprised. They feel like the Chinese economy is going to collapse, all this stuff. But if you change your mind, this is going to be a new model. This is going to be a new model. That's it. And I know this is going to be slowing. It's called the middle income trap. That's the Chinese society is experiencing right now. It's not going to change for the next decade. I mean, that's probably after 5 years, people say, okay, this is a Chinese economy. This is normal Chinese economy. Nothing fancy about that. And they still need the foreign technology, but sometimes they have to straighten out how they balance so-called the foreign influence versus domestic, economic need. So it's very complex. If you talk to Chinese officials, sometimes they don't know why they do this stuff. It's just like,
Waiting on the direction.
Yeah, because everybody don't know what's the next order.
Well, I was reporting about health, public health in China. This was before the pandemic, and people that were working on tobacco control, initiatives. And they were saying, well, we still work there, even though really we haven't seen many declines in smoking, right? Because we know that at any point a directive could come from the top that says, we're banning all indoor smoking, and they're piloting all these projects around China. That's what happened from
And Pam said right. It's risky. You have no idea what's going on tomorrow, and all the city officer or mayor, they told me they don't know what's going on. And their philosophy is do nothing and wait. Because if you do everything, you contradict the policy tomorrow. And that's happening within the China. So the foreigner come in have no clue at all. Because you may meet somebody today and he's demoted tomorrow. You have a contract. So I think maybe take the new leadership 1 year to straighten out the internal politics, and once they have policy clear, and you guys go there. Because right now, you're sometimes you don't know what happened. You just got shot when you lay down. You don't know why. That's not your fault. You just at the wrong time, wrong place. So, but I still believe it's a huge population, huge markets. They are not going to do. But they're not going to prosper as we see it before. It's just. And one more thing I'll say is, if you go to China, you see the convenience, everything. You just need to have a face. You can buy everything. You buy a drink, that facial recognition, right? You go to railway. It's very convenient, but behind the convenience, the 1.3 billion people. In Chinese, it's called nature, meaning cat race or evolution, meaning you go to the street, you can have 8 coffee shops compete each other. And if you got delivered, 10 minutes deliver, 15 minutes deliver. Whenever you can order midnight, right? But if you look at the story behind, that's really terrible, because the people who deliver your stuff, they have to work 16 hours a day to feed family. And something wrong with the society. That's the things behind. That's their,
Can we open it up? I was going to say, if anybody has questions, y'all go ahead. Michael's got a microphone, and you're welcome to ask. I think we're running up against 9:30, but y'all are welcome to ask anything. Yeah, something. And Eric, if you want to come up as well, to be available. If not, I've got more questions, but we can kind of release it for networking time. We've got one here.
Maybe just a quick comment. I really appreciate David's comments about the way things have returned to normal after COVID. Or on the face of China seems to have returned to normal. I was in Shanghai during the prior to and during the lockdowns. And being locked in your apartment for 2 months and having no food and being tested for COVID 3 times a day. And the comment is, well, it's all back to normal. I mean, I walk along the streets where I was paraded to go get my COVID test. And you go back to that street now, and you walk down the street and everything's normal, but it's not.
Yeah, right.
And if you think that going there and everything, you walk the streets, everything looks good, everything looks fine, everything's okay, yeah, that can change tomorrow. And it's all based on the political will of what happens, and it's not under your control. And I think part of the reason it's gone back to normal is because people have no control. What else can you do but go back to your life?
Yeah.
Because you really can't do anything else about it.
And the protests and everything were really striking for what that represented, but yeah, no real policy change.
Just one other point there.
Sure.
Also, it's very unusual to go to the airport, and when you get through immigration, to feel a relief that you weren't detained. And that's because that's happened to people, and they're not allowed to leave.
Well, yeah, and
So that's you go there and you think everything's normal, but for some people that are trying to leave, it's not normal because you can't leave.
yeah, and you read about executives particularly getting caught in the crosshairs of trade tensions.
Yeah, 2 questions. One just ties to that. How safe is it for American business people to go to China now? That was the question I had in the reports generally. I guess that or make a comment. So that's one question. The second is, just, you guys have touched on it, but just summarize maybe your opportunities you see for U.S. exporters to China. My answer to them when they ask me about exports to China, I say, you have to have something unique, certainly, that the Chinese really can't get easily in China. And often it's something that is foreign that's quite attractive to the Chinese. I was in the food and beverage industry for a long time, and so we were making food ingredients outside of China. And the Chinese loved our products because they were foreign, they were safe, but also you can use the example of Toto toilets. They can't, they go to Japan to get Toto toilets because they know they're real, or Japanese rice cookers. They can go to Japan and get those Chinese rice cookers, or Japanese rice cookers. So the question is, what opportunities, summarize opportunities you see for U.S. exporters to China?
Is it safe, and export opportunities? Anybody?
The U.S. Embassy, I think, has China at a level 3, which is not, safe. So you have to be smart about what safe is. So before we go, we ensure what's on our computers. I'm sorry. I mean, again, safety is relative. I would not have wanted to be in Maine yesterday.
Yeah.
And I have never really felt fear leaving the country. I've traveled the world. There is safety is relative. If you look at the U.S. Embassy and what they say about China, they have the right to detain someone. It is a communist country. So, you have to understand, what your risk is. And you have to then respect their laws, regulation, and also I would, to have relationship in case something happens, is what I consider when I go. Like my husband was very concerned my last trip. Of course I'm thinking about when I go. And I'm thinking, okay, I am responsible for my facility. If anything happens whatsoever, I am responsible. I understand the risk. It doesn't mean I'm something could happen. So I'm not an idiot, but it is part of the situation when you work with China. So you just have to be smart. And when it comes to, the exportation into China, if anybody else would like to, because you are doing that, right? Or the importation, if you would like to talk about it? Yeah.
Dan, what Anisa just said about safety, if that was a concern, we recently had Senator Ossoff there. I'm sure he went there with no problems, right? And so did the governor of California was there. Yeah, they have political reasons to be there, but I'm sure they are also talking about business opportunities, because I know that I'm talking to their offices and saying, hey, what are the opportunities for us? So I believe, just like you have said, as long as you got a unique product, they'll buy. If it's a designer brand or close to a design brand, they will buy. And I think that's where the biggest opportunity lies. Just like a Singles Day is coming, and I look at what sells, what is selling over there. What was the highest amount of products that they bought? What kind of merchandise? And that's the kind of thing I would focus on and going back and seeing if I can be one of the suppliers to that merchandise. Yeah, sorry.
In terms of safety, my experience, even I'm a Chinese face, and because I wrote something on the newspaper back in China, and when I in the security, they're gonna, I don't know, there are some tools to review my opinions online, and they're gonna hold me for 5 minutes and just go over stuff. But in general case, I think that the governments of China are quite friendly to particularly American, maybe not Canadian, Australian, but to American. There's American exceptional in China. That's for sure. I have some friends working in the security ministry, but they treat differently. So, be honestly, American generally are safe. They're not detaining you until you're some kind of a group. They think it's anti-government political. But if you're a businessman, I don't think they're going to detain you. In terms of products, the Chinese, same thing. Just concept, America. There's an anti-American attitude. But you talk individual American culture, Hollywood, all this IT, ChatGPT is quite popular. So these things can change overnight. So I think C is going to be here in California. That's why the Newsom's being welcomed in China, because the two guys are going to meet maybe months later. So I see the sense of relax or improvement of China-U.S. relations because of what happening in the Middle East, what happening in the Ukraine and Russia.
Yes.
I kind of believe the U.S. can't fight so many wars. They have in certain way to cooperate or compromise with China. So that's good news for the business industry.
Yes.
Like I said, this whole thing can change overnight. Yeah, the Chinese people by nature are not stubborn people. They just change quickly. They don't have like a long-term, like 10 years, some kind of policy. They just go as fit. So that's the hardest part for Westerner to understand the Chinese. One day they've been very hard, right? But next day it can be like a pretty weak, show a weaker part. You just don't know. So just be a common sense. Every time you see the media, and most likely it's not true. It's just
Except for Global Atlanta, I mean.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for that. I think that I just wanted to end on a note on the trade front. I just looked at the Georgia numbers, and one of the reasons I thought this would be an interesting discussion is we talk about decoupling, de-risking, whatever D you want to throw out there. But I mean, the inertia, again, of the Chinese economy and the trade relationship is so strong. I mean, it's still Georgia's largest trading partner by far, mostly on the import side, obviously. But there are some signs in the most recent numbers I saw that things are shifting a little bit. Imports from China grew more slowly than all other top 10 markets for Georgia imports, and India and Vietnam, places like that, are skyrocketing, so that shows you a little bit. Exports to China dropped by 3%. It was one of the only two top 10 trading partners for Georgia that saw that happen. So the rest of them were growing, China and one other one were dropping. But then, again, total trade grew by 4%. It's at like $20-something billion, $40-something billion. So it's a huge, there's still a huge amount of trade going on. There's still a bunch of opportunities, and there's obviously risks and challenges. So I want to thank y'all for discussing that and giving us a mixed picture, but one that we can build on.